I took the podcast on the road to the first robotics competition. This incredible organization brings together a vibrant community of kids ages 4 to 18, fostering their passion for science and technology through team-based robotics programming. On this episode of Forging the Future, I had a chance to talk with Dean Kamen, the founder of FIRST and DECA Research and Development. Let's check it out. Thanks for tuning in to Forging the Future. And today I'm honored to have Dean Kamen with us today. Dean is a leading scientist and inventor of some of the most breakthrough products known today in medicine, transportation, environmental science, and robotics. As an inventor, he holds more than 1,000 U.S. and foreign patents and went on to found FIRST, a global robotics community and competition fueling youth all over the world to discover and build their careers in STEM. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Great to be here.
That is quite a list of accomplishments. And 1,000 patents. You're like a little bit of an overachiever, maybe?
I just work hard.
Yeah, and you're in one today. I have to get me one of those chairs. This is like the precursor to the Segway, or
yes, it is.
Yeah. So, and it was originally supposed to be for like an assistive technology thing, right?
That's not just originally. That's what it is.
It is. Okay.
And it's
all
primary.
Right.
It was a class 3 medical device to help paraplegics and quadriplegics do what you and I do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Look our friends in the eye. Be at eye level. Go
right.
up and down stairs.
Right.
Go through sand and snow. This thing gives people independence, access, and dignity.
Well, I had an opportunity to walk around here. It's very impressive how global and large this is, so I mean, congratulations
Thank you
for that, because I know when you started this 30 plus years ago now,
slightly over 30 years ago. We started with 28 teams.
Yeah.
By the next year, about 50. By the next year, about 100. By the next year, about 200. That's nice growth.
Yeah.
Now, after over 30 years, we have over 81,000 schools around the world. 200,000 volunteer mentors. We'll give out this year $80 million in scholarships to kids on FIRST teams. We have 3,700 corporate sponsors. And it's almost all driven by volunteers and sponsors that really are committed to building the workforce of the future.
Yeah, that's impressive to behold. Well, how did you really get started in all that? Maybe tell me a little bit about your early interest in creativity and invention. Was it school? Was it something else? What really led you to be an inventor?
I guess the truth of it is I never did very well in school. I rather do projects than sit in a room and try to guess what answer they wanted me to pick, especially if it was already in the back of the book. That's not very exciting. I just found school not very exciting. And I realized I probably wouldn't be a very good employee because I wasn't a very good student. And I realized that I better do something. If I'm not going to be a good employee, when I grow up, what am I going to do? So I decided I would start designing and building what I thought would be neat solutions to people's problems. And it wouldn't matter whether I did well in school or not. I didn't have to apply for a job with a resume.
And what age were you at that point?
I started my first business when I was 14.
14.
And I just said, if I build stuff that people want, I'll let the stuff speak for itself. If people want it and they're willing to pay me more than it costs to make it, very naively, I assumed the difference between what my parts cost me and what somebody would pay for it would be my profit. And then instead of getting a job, that's how I would go. And so at 14, I started building. It was in the early days of power electronics, SCRs and triacs. And it was in the early days of what I guess we could blame the engineers for creating, the age of psychedelic music, right? And I realized that small bands are going to want these kinds of capabilities to make light shows. And so I started building little boxes for local bands in my parents' basement. And all the money I made for building these things, I used to buy electronic equipment and then a small lathe and a small milling machine.
Your own maker lab, huh?
Yeah, I built my own maker's lab long before they called them that. And then I had an older brother that was going through medical school, and he'd come home on the weekends and say he needed ways to deliver very, very precise amounts of drugs to neonates, to premature babies that might only weigh a couple of pounds. And these kids had cancer. My brother was an MD and a PhD in pharmacology, brilliant guy, and he's doing his residency at Yale. And he's, Dean, I need equipment to try to make these therapies work. And they don't make equipment like that. And I looked into it and I said, I'll bet the reason they don't make equipment like that is there's not a big market. Fortunately, there aren't that many babies with these rare diseases. And adults need IV pumps with large volumes and high rates. So I said to my brother, let's just take the drugs you're using, and before you dilute them into these 1 liter, 1 quart bags, I'll put them in a precision syringe, and I'll make a precision little motor drive and a little lead screw, and you can deliver even 1/10 of a cc in a day with great precision. So I made those for him. It wasn't a business. Brothers don't pay you anything. But he was very proud of it. So he would show all the professors at both Harvard and Yale, where he was doing his residency work, and a lot of those docs would see it. And they say to him, that's so small and neat, and since it was battery operated, to be in an isolate with a baby. But one of the docs at Yale said, I could put that in the pocket of a full-grown adult woman who has diabetes, who's trying to have a baby, and we all knew by then you could take a shot or 2 of insulin and stay reasonably healthy, but you try to have a full-term baby and the baby grows and isn't going to be a baby with diabetes, the blood sugar of the mom going up and down during the pregnancy would be a problem. So this doc said to my brother, get me a couple of those pumps. I'm going to put them on some women that are trying to conceive babies, and if they go 9 months and have healthy babies, we will prove what he speculated to be the truth. A shot or 2 of insulin a day is not the right way to treat somebody with diabetes. So I built a bunch of pumps. I delivered them to these docs. They did as they said they would do, put them on some women who all had very healthy babies. It became very well published in the medical journals, very prestigious journals. And the next thing you know, I'm getting calls from all over the world that people need my insulin pumps for people with diabetes.
And so it was like they called it the Auto Syringe, is that right?
I started a company, not very creative in the name. I was taking tiny little syringes and automating the precision delivery out of them. So I called the company Auto Syringe. And after a couple of years, a lot of the big guys realized there are a lot of applications for low-dose delivery of drugs. So one of the big companies out there, at the time Baxter Healthcare, bought the company. And in addition to buying the company and scaling it up, I made an agreement with them that, hey, all my people that do manufacturing and all my salespeople, they'll do better with you. You'll scale them up. But my small group of people that do the design and development and creativity, they probably don't want to work for your big company. They'd probably leave you. So let's agree before you buy the company, I'll set up a new little company with my initials, DECA, because I didn't know what product it would make. Is it an auto syringe or an iBot or a dialysis machine or a stent or a lot of the things we make? I said, I'll form a new company. I'll give you a period of time where you'll get the first option to look at all of our stuff, which is an extra benefit from you. And I'll continue to do support engineering on Auto Syringe and other products for you. And they said, great. So I sold Auto Syringe to Baxter, and they're still a great partner and client of ours after 30 years. I designed a lot of their next generation, for instance, of dialysis equipment, and they've shipped over 1 billion therapies on our dialysis equipment and built hundreds of thousands of these machines so that people could dialyze themselves alone, at home, in private, in their bedroom at night when they're sleeping, and they have better outcomes, and they have more flexibility and dignity. And so it's been a great follow-on to the sale of Auto Syringe. And now DECA, my company, has over 900 design engineers, and we work on all sorts of interesting products.
Does that drive a lot of what you're trying to do? It seems to me that you like to have a large social impact. right?
Yeah. We only work on a project. It has to meet a lot of people say to me, what made you work on this or that or even first? People have said to me, you work on so many different things. And the first time I heard that, I said, I don't know what you mean. And they said, well, look, you have an iBot, you have first. I said, they're not different things. It made me think about how I could explain to people how we pick our projects. I said, I have to work on something that nobody else is doing it this way. Because if somebody else is doing it this way and it's going to get done anyway, I'm wasting my time. Number two, in other words, I'm not going to make somebody's product 2% cheaper or 3% more. Things that big companies know how to always constantly, incrementally improve their products. And they probably will do that better than I could. They know their products, they have the people. So I said, no, I got to find a completely different approach to a problem. Like this iBot, this balancing robot, is not a minor improvement over a wheelchair. And our home dialysis machine, that's a self-administered life support therapy, is not a minor improvement over the junk you see in a big clinical setting. And in the same way, first, there's a lot of people with science fairs. I didn't want to make a science fair a little better. Hey, I'll assume as an what do inventors do? Inventors look at the same problems as everybody else, but they see them differently. And I said, everybody back 30 years ago said, oh, we have an education crisis. I had the epiphany, just like the epiphany is people have to stand up and balance. The epiphany for first was people have misdiagnosed this problem. We don't have an education problem at all in this country. We have the best colleges in the world. We have the best public education in the world. We spend more money on K-12 education per capita than any country in the world. My mom is a teacher. Everybody I know has some teacher that's changed their life. I said, you know what? This idea that, we're making less engineers per capita than the rest of the world. We have so many girls that don't do math or science. Oh, it's an education crisis. I said, no, it's not. It's a culture crisis. It's not what we don't have enough of in this country. It's what we have more of than the rest of the world. Because we became a successful economy, we invented things like leisure time. We invented all sorts of distractions from education, from hard work. We invent superstars in the NBA and the NFL, and we made leisure time the place that everybody aspires to be. Well, I said, you know what? Let's assume it's not an education problem, it's a culture problem. And let's figure out a way to get kids as passionate about developing that muscle hanging between their ears as they get passionate about bouncing a ball or kicking a ball or being on a stage. And I said, I know how you get passion in kids. Sports. We don't have to invent that. They've made it work. Do it after school. Don't give them quizzes and tests like you do in the classroom. The teacher turns his or her hat around after school and goes from the teacher required to give you red marks and tell you got a D or an F. That teacher after school goes from teacher to coach, a nurturing person that's going to help you do better. And if you strike out or you miss the catch, they help you and you do better. And at the end of the season, you don't have final exams. You have double elimination tournaments. And you don't get quizzes and tests. You get letters and trophies. And you bring the school band and you bring the mascots and you celebrate. No wonder kids like sports. So I said, with all the well-defined methods that sports has used to make kids passionate about developing those skills, what if we used exactly that model to create a sport that will be as exciting as every other sport? And I said from day one, first is not going to compete with science fairs. We're competing with the Super Bowl and the World Series for the hearts and minds of kids. But what if we could do it with a sport that in every way is just as good as all the others, but it's got one difference. Every kid on every team can turn pro. Most kids are never going to be able to make a nickel playing professional sports. The industry's not that big. But every kid on a first team, there's a career waiting for them in engineering, in science, and technology.
And I've heard that. I've heard some of the stories from the kids as I walked around. I was talking to a gentleman at NASA right downstairs. He told me about how he went through first Lego League, went through all 3 programs, the first, and now he's a NASA engineer where they're designing the drone, the rover that's going to the moon, that's going to drill into the South Pole to do testing and check for water. So I think that's a big differentiator. And just like you said, every kid can go pro. They can continue on with their career path and go into engineering and have a career and an impact with confidence, actually. I mean, many of these kids have confidence, not just the engineering part, but the communication part and the collaboration part. And you've built this organization where it is about competition, but there's a unique collaboration piece to it too, right?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's not an accident. And while you said, well, you built it as a competition, actually, and we've actually trademarked this phrase, we said from day one, I said, it's not really a competition, it's a coopetition. I want the robots to compete because each one is made with a different idea, and competing ideas will show which idea is the best, but it will be shown to everybody and shared with everybody, so all the kids will benefit from everything all the other kids did. And I said from day one, we are not using kids to build robots. We're using robots to build kids. And in the coopetition, most of the robots are going to lose, but all the kids are going to win, because the kids, as you pointed out, what they're learning is way more than technology. They're learning how to communicate. They're learning how to cooperate. They're learning all the skills you need to deal in a complex world with complex issues on large teams. And FIRST is really a microcosm for these kids of what their world could be like if they watch the mentors and sponsors that are here as volunteers, showing them what the real world could be like for them if they develop that muscle hanging between their ears.
So besides the collaboration, the coopetition, what are some of a few of the other values that the teams are supposed to exhibit?
I think among the strongest values, first of all, what they learn is, in school, you pretty much are given a problem to which there's a known answer. It's in the back of the book. There's nothing wrong with that. You get to learn what it took thousands of, you learn Pythagoras' theorem. He's been dead for 2,000 years. You learn Newton's laws. He's been dead for 300 or 400 years. There's nothing wrong with standing on the shoulders of giants and learning everything that we already know. But somehow, unless kids get to see that there's all sorts of exciting questions to which there are no known answers. If you had to learn how to play football, but you never got to play a game because they put the answer in the back of the book, we know who's going to win that game. You wouldn't watch it. You wouldn't play it. So I think one of the things that kids learn as they open that kit for the first time and rummage through it, they see there's all sorts of things in that kit. But there's one thing that's conspicuously missing: the instruction set on how to put it together. Because the answer is, we don't know, they don't know, there is no right answer. We work really hard to design a game where reasonable engineers would say, oh, with the goal at that height, that's pretty high. I think I'm going to shoot. No, that goal, I think I'm going to climb. If most engineers would climb it, we'd make it taller. If everybody would shoot, we'd make it shorter. But we do everything we can so that reasonable engineers with a lot of experience look at every aspect of the game and go, I don't know what's the right answer. There probably isn't a right answer. But like the real world, there are a lot of creative ways to attack a problem. And once kids see that, in fact, unlike their idea that math is all fixed and boring and there's nothing exciting or surprising in it, we can show them the first time they come to a FIRST event, our events are as exciting as any other sporting event. And more than that, they realize the open-ended opportunity to invent, to create solutions to complex problems is there for them if they know how to use the tools. And the tools to build these great new solutions, the tools they have are mathematics, trigonometry and algebra, calculus, and physics and electrical engineering. And they can start to realize with these powerful tools, they can create a future.
So looking back over this 30-year history, when you first started FIRST and where it's grown to now, did you envision what it is today? Is it what you intended? Has anything surprised you along that way?
So I'll shorten your question to the rude way I'm asked that question normally, which is, hey, Dean, is it exactly what you think? And did you ever believe it would be this big?
Yeah.
And my answer to that is always the same. I thought it would be this big by the second year. We did an experiment in the first year. Every team loved it, and we saw it have a positive impact on all the kids. And I know it would be critical to this country to immediately grow the pipeline of kids with STEM skills. So I thought it would grow organically so quickly that it would be in every school soon. Mm-hmm. And every year thereafter, I thought, this is the year that we're just going to go to that's why we started regional events. Then we started having the first Lego League for the little kids. And every time we added a component, I thought, this is the year that we're going to get to every school. So on the one hand, when people ask me, what do you think? Yes, I'm very proud that we've got 500,000 kids on these teams. I'm very proud that we have such an enormous scale of sponsors and mentors. But on the other hand, when you look at the scale of the opportunity, and when you look at the scale of need for qualified people for the industries of the future, I think it's a shame that FIRST isn't already available to every kid in this country. So I'm both very proud of where we got, but I thought it would be another instant overnight success like all my other instant overnight successes that take 10 or 20 years. But I'm desperately waiting for it to just be as available in the school as football or basketball. We just take it for granted that kids can get on a FIRST team, and that's going to happen.
So some states are already there, right? Pretty close. Some states are a little further behind, I imagine. But also you have FIRST Global, which is now in practically every country. I think you've checked everyone off.
We're in 192 countries.
That's amazing.
And we're doing our next event in Singapore in October of this year. And we already have almost every country in the world signed up with a team.
Yeah, that's impressive. But there's still challenges with getting STEM to kids. I mean, what else do we need to be doing to foster that pathway?
I think there is a very deep cultural perspective that somehow still permeates a lot of families and communities, which is sports like football and basketball. Every kid knows about the World Series. Every kid knows about the Super Bowl. Every kid knows about the Academy Awards and the Grammy Awards, and they can tell you the name of famous people, but they're all from the NBA or the NFL or Hollywood. And there's a deep cultural sense in this country, particularly among young girls, that math, science, engineering's not for girls, and these other things, they're hard and they're boring and there's no future in them. And then you can't blame them, because you look at, go by a newsstand and look at every magazine. It's beautiful young people that aren't real, or it's athletes that are superstars in a very, very small industry. And as you look at all of that, and you recognize that in a free culture, in a free country, you get the best of what you celebrate. And deep in our culture, we celebrate all sorts of things, but we still don't celebrate how much fun and how accessible and how important science, technology, engineering, mathematics, inventing really is. And it carries a stigma to it. Nerds and geeks. And it carries a stigma that inventors are all wacky and crazy. And I think while that's easy to make the nerds and the geeks the butt of a cheap joke, it has a consequence. And until young girls decide you can be part of a very cool culture and still be good in math and science and be an attractive person, and until the guys decide you can be a really good, popular guy and like to do physics and math and invent, until that happens, this country is going to be limiting a lot of the opportunity it has to grow a broader, way more powerful base of technology people, which we're going to need if we want to maintain leadership in the world in every way, in our economic competitions with the rest of the world, and our own security with respect to the rest of the world. And America, I think, has been taking it for granted that, we'll always be the best at tech, and we'll always have the best defense. I'm sorry, it doesn't come for free. And if every generation doesn't continue to invest in it, it's going to go away.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. Certainly, back when I grew up, there was a stigma attached to it, right? So now I'm a little proud to be a geek, but the perception does need to change. So what are the results that you're seeing for that? Are you seeing a sea change in some of that? Or we have to change a culture where students want to aspire to be social influencers more than they want to do something like STEM?
All you have to do is walk around this place, and the most common statement you'll hear, period. When a kid comes up to me, it's, Dean, first changed my life. It gave me a sense of what I can do. It gave me something to focus on. I met people that I aspire to be like. When you meet the moms, it's even scarier. So many of the moms around here will tell you they were concerned that their kids were adrift or, were introverted or weren't part of anything. And then their kids became part of the first community. And not only did they develop all these great skills and they developed self-confidence, but they developed serious relationships in a network of serious people that can really give them the kinds of direction they need to become successful adults.
And you can participate in FIRST in a number of ways, right? So there's school programs, there's after-school programs, there's homeschool groups as well, right?
Oh, we have a lot of our teams are homeschoolers. Yeah, it's funny that people will always say to me, Dean, in order to be involved in FIRST, can I? And before they finish, I say, the answer is yes. It doesn't matter what your question is. The answer is yes. Well, can I be a homeschooler? Yes. Can 3 schools that are really small all work together and have only one team? Yes. Can one school that's really big have 3 separate teams? Yes. Can one sponsoring company support more than one team? Yes. Can 3 companies get to? It doesn't matter, people. Anything you can do to join the FIRST community that you'd be proud of, the answer is yes.
And then what can communities and companies do to be a part of this solution?
So everybody has their own strength, and I think you have to know how to make it a win-win. For instance, I wouldn't go to a big foundation that's in the business of distributing grants and money and say, I need mentors. They don't have a lot of engineers. I wouldn't go to a university and say, write us a big check. Universities, they take money from students. They take money from their parents. They take money from the alumni. They take money from the government. They take money from industry. They don't write checks. But they give scholarships, lots and lots of scholarships, and they have professors and mentors in some of their kids' careers. So I learned over the years, go to foundations and ask them for money to help teams that need it. Go to universities, ask them for mentors, and ask them for scholarships. Go to industry and ask them for really cool technology to put in the kits. Go to government. The answer to your question is, how does anybody get involved? You look at, what do you need to create a community that can make this happen? There's a lot of things you need, so you figure out who has a lot of those things, and you focus your ask to each of the groups that has the kinds of stuff you need, so that holistically we can have a fantastic celebration like we're having here at the end of this season.
Dean, was there anything you wanted to mention in particular before we wrap up?
I would just say to you guys, please help us get the word out. I know you work in particular with entrepreneurs or investors. Those are the kinds of people that ought to be involved in the FIRST community. You're going to need these kids. You're going to need to be in a network with people that you want to either raise money with or sell ideas to. FIRST is a remarkable network, and I think you guys would enjoy being part of it. I think you'll get more out of it than you put into it, and we'll expect you to put a lot into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a big believer in the program, big believer in the impact of internships, also giving back to the community. And I think also Softex Global Reach can help there. I saw the team from Lithuania down below. We have a large office there. Team from Germany, we're in Munich, so we absolutely want to help. Well, thanks for being on the podcast and the show today, Dean. I've got my first robotic socks on today,
Thank you.
so you know,
Thank you.
I have a lag, so appreciate
boy.
being on the show. Probably some crazy socks in there for you as well.
Hey,
So
thank you.
yeah, so thanks for everything you're doing here.
Thank you. See you later.